Carol, we've got to stop meeting this way. We'll be together all day. You okay?
Yeah, I just got news. My mom just had a fall, so I'm going
Good.
my sister. But
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, you know.
Mhm.
But yes, thank you.
She's okay?
I don't know, the ER. They're picking her up to take her to the ER to check her out. She's in pain, so but my
Okay.
sister's there.
All we can do is pray.
Exactly. Just writing to my girls. That's what I'm writing my kids.
Okay.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing?
Doing fine.
Hey, Mayor. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Camera.
It's not raining right now, so looks good to me. Hope everyone is doing well. Then we normally get Amy's with us. Good. I think I see Councilmember Seekings has joined us. Thank you. And all our committee members are here, I think, except for Councilmember Appel.
He's going to miss today, Mayor. He's in a mediation.
Okay.
job.
Well, in that event, everybody's here and we can go ahead and proceed. That'd be good. So we'll get going. And I don't know that there's much on the agenda other than our 2021 budget for next year. I will ask you to join me in a moment of silence as we reflect on our deliberations and decisions for the good of our citizens and our city going forward. Thank you. And I'm thankful for all the many blessings we have. I'll say that just in general. So we have a discussion of our 2021 draft general fund and enterprise funds budget. Of course, we've been talking about this for a number of sessions here of our ad hoc budget committee, which has been very helpful to me and to Amy. But Amy mostly has been helpful to us because they've been doing a remarkable job in this time of uncertainty, with the impacts of COVID-19 and what that does on our projections, well, particularly on the revenue side, and our collaboration. I must tell you all again, collaboration among all of our department heads and division leaders and budget and finance to try to hone down on those expenses that we can either defray or reduce or put off. Everybody's really working hard on that. We've had the hiring freeze in place for 2020. We actually have less employees employed at the city of Charleston right now than we did at the beginning of this year. You know, our needs and our population continues to grow. We're providing all of our essential city services with less employees. And if you compare it to, you know, 10 years ago over time, our employee staff is reduced considerably, while at the same time, our population has increased considerably. So I point that out to share with you that the challenges we have are, and I think most of you know this, primarily on the revenue side, and not on the expense side. I'm not saying there isn't a single ounce of something out there that we could cut, but there's no big slab of fat, and we've got a pretty lean running organization right now. And where our real challenge is the fact that, our projection for business license revenue is for next year is down something like $9-10 million. Our projection for parking revenue is down by a similar amount. Our projection for both accommodations funding and hospitality or accommodations tax is way down compared to normal years. So the challenges we face are mostly on the revenue side and not on the expense side. So it's taken a remarkable effort just to get this proposal to you today. And without talking any further, let me turn it over to Amy to bring us the details. Amy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so since our last ad hoc meeting, we were at a $14.7 million deficit. That was the base budget of 18 million, less the cuts that were made by the department heads and also by us. And at that time, we presented 5 options to balance the budget, which I'll remind you of in the next 2 slides. So we had millage and lost, increasing both millage by 3 mills and keeping for 50% of the local option sales tax revenue fund. We had just a 3 mil increase, just keeping 50% of the local option sales tax revenue fund. And then we had it at 2 mills and 50% loss and 3 mills at a 25% loss. I don't know if you remember all of those options. Just thought I'd remind you. I can go back, Mayor. So
Yeah, go over those a little more.
So if we were to raise millage and also keep 50% of local option sales tax, we would not have to do a furlough or pay reduction to employees. We would have a deficit of almost $5.3 million, which we would have fund balance to cover. If we just raised millage by 3 mills, and we would have to do the pay reduction for employees, that was a value of, I think, about $2.1 million. We would still have a deficit of 7.2. We can use fund balance up to $6 million, as we discussed before, and that would have us maintain our 20% requirement. We would still have a $1.2 million deficit, so we'd have to find additional cuts. Local option only, 50%, keeping 50% of the lost revenue fund. We would still need to do the pay reduction for employees, have a deficit of 7.6, almost 7.6 million. We could use the fund balance of 6 million, like I said, but we would still have a $1.6 million deficit of additional cuts we would need to make. Then we looked at just a 2 mil increase plus keeping 50% of local option sales tax. We could do no pay reduction for employees. We'd have a $6.4 million deficit. We could use the fund balance of 6, but we'd still have to cut $427,000 somewhere. And then a 3 mil increase at just keeping 25% of lost, which would mean we'd be giving back 75%. No pay reduction, well, or at least a reduced pay reduction, deficit of 7, use fund balance of 6 million, we'd have a $1 million deficit of additional cuts. So we'd have to decide how we would do that. Questions?
And I think, Amy, the emphasis is doing nothing. We have $14.7 million deficit. We will have to find how to handle that in other means. I mean, that's the bottom line.
That's right. Okay. So this is the draft budget I sent to you all. Just well, I sent you a different version, but this actually, I just have revenues and expenses for the general fund, because like you said, it's really long, but I can share my screen if you want to see it more detailed. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Or is this okay?
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
He's good.
So still have a 9.5 million, almost $9.6 million deficit in the general fund. 4.26 million we can use in enterprise funds to help balance, and we're having to use 5.2 or almost $5.3 million in our fund balance. And that's based on raising millage, 3 mills, and also keeping 50% of local option, as we discussed in our last meeting.
So that's under the presumption that you would use the reserve to cover the 5.3 million.
Yeah. No matter what, we're gonna have to use some reserves.
Right. Councilmember Waring?
Yeah, so if we did the millage, the difference that we have to come up with, you know, but for lost revenue, if we didn't do the 50%, is how much? 5 million? I think you had it on there.
Yeah, so
5.2 or whatever.
we'd have to come up with, that would include the furlough or the pay reduction of 2.1 million, and then we'd have to find an additional 1.2.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay. So,
Amy, let me ask you a question. I mean, you were this might be kind of splitting hairs, but in all but one of the scenarios, you mentioned that $6 million, it must be kind of an acceptable limit for us to use of our existing reserve. Almost all the options you say we could use fund balance of 6 million.
of up to $6 million, yes.
Yeah, so if you went back to that first option and you said we would use 6 million rather than 5.3, wouldn't that bring us to about a 2.5 mil increase rather than 3?
Well, it could. I mean, we'd have to do the calculation to make sure where it would, but yeah, if we wanted to use all of the 6 million of our fund balance.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm just asking the question. Again, it might be splitting hairs at this point, but taking out of one pocket rather than the other.
Amy, on the lost revenue, and I know there's some hypotheticals out there, and I know they're one-time money, and I believe me, I heed your warning about doing budgets with non-recurring revenue. But if the city were to come up with either monies out of Washington or some additional revenues from sources we're working with right now, and we were to come up with, I don't know, $4 million, let's say within the first 6 months of fiscal year 21, we still would have time, if we wanted to, that is, to reduce and give more monies back to lost revenue to the taxpayers. How much time do we have to?
Set millage in the tax credit factor in September. That's when we set it.
All right. Okay.
So we really wouldn't know until September. Well, I mean, we couldn't do anything until September.
Okay. So in other words, if we still continue to work on this budget into 21 to create revenues that we don't have today, if those revenues were to be available, in effect, I guess we do mid-year budget adjustment, and so you have plenty of time to make the adjustment in September.
Right. You need to amend the budget. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Shade?
Mr. Mayor, do we have any idea, either way, with any of the proposals that were floated from the House of Representatives on this COVID relief money, how that would translate into cities? Has anybody looked into that and come up with any hard numbers or estimates as to what kind of money would be filtered into cities?
Yeah, I think Rick probably knows.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I mean, The only thing that's passed Congress is the bill that passed the House this past May. That would have provided $38 million to the city in this fiscal year and 18 million next fiscal year. However, that's just passed the House. It's probably not going to pass the Senate. So, and Congress hasn't passed anything, but that was sort of the range. They were basing it on the community development block grant formula, and municipalities would get their share based on that. So that was sort of a one shot in this fiscal year and another one shot next fiscal year. And no one can say whether that's going to happen.
Well, I know that, but at least it gives us sort of a basis of understanding that, and I think you said, Rick, 38 million for fiscal year 2020.
That's correct, and 18 million. And again, that was the House passed bill that was based on a community development block grant allocation formula.
And if we receive some kind of ballpark within either one of those figures, that would eliminate the need for this millage increase and this lost revenue.
Well, based upon what Rick just said, even blowing off money for 2020, if we even got half of what they said, what the House passed for 2021, we would not be having this discussion here today about millage and local option sales tax credit. We would have a balanced budget. That's all there is to it.
And that's the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Mayor, is that in the money that if allocated, if that bill had passed and gone to the Senate and been passed, we would not be having this discussion.
That's correct.
And even if we just got a portion of that, so if there's some compromise that comes out of the Senate and the House next year in 2021, between now and September, we have the opportunity then to not have to worry about this millage increase or this lost revenue that we've been discussing. And I think that's something that the general public just needs to be aware of, that the cities get stuck as a last governing body on the totem pole. We're limited on how we can raise money. And we sometimes look to the federal government for grants and other sources of income from the federal government. And that was a missed opportunity for us. And that's important for the public to be aware of. This is a reality.
Yeah, I think in Amy, I'm going to try to defend your budgeting. I mean, that's a one-time boost to our revenue stream, but it doesn't, it was still going to have problems in 2022 if our traditional revenue streams don't get back to normal.
Right. But it will give time for some of that recovery to occur. And even though business license and parking revenues might not be quite back at 2022, they sure ought to be better than they are right now, projected.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think we didn't really get to do it this time, and I have the understanding that the open season for enrollment for our medical is about to close. But certainly in the 21, to help Amy out, I do believe we need to look at the dependent amount that we supplement as a city on our medical plan. I do believe out of that, I don't know, $24 million or whatever that number is, a big number, that we can tweak that a little bit and maybe pick up $1 million or maybe perhaps $2 million out of that. And if you say, why do I say that? We have very good health benefits for our employees, but we also have very good health benefits from a cost perspective for our employees. I don't really know. I know the federal government doesn't supplement dependent costs to the level that we do. State government doesn't. County government doesn't. And if we are in our, God forbid, if our revenues this time next year are in a similar situations, then we're really going to need to look at not trimming the employee benefit, but we're going to need to trim the dependent benefit side. And even though we wouldn't have maybe the revenues, but we're going to have to look a little bit more strenuous at the expense side on the medical benefits. I think that is something to look at in 21, because you're right. Amy's right. One-time revenues. That's not the way to go out budgeting. But prayerfully, we're just using that as a bridge. And I know you know this, Mr. Mayor, and so does Peter and the rest of the people on the call. But hopefully, we're trying to find a bridge to a better economy. And with the virus, with the vaccines coming out, hopefully, 6 months from now, prayerfully, we're going to be looking at an economy that's a lot more open than it is today.
Right. That's our hope.
Right. Now, Amy, one of those, which ones that I forget which now, but at the end of the day, it had a 427. That was a 2 mil increase. So then if we do the 3 mils and then the 50% loss money, that pretty much
We're covered.
Right.
okay.
And then, because I have awesome staff, they told me that if we did 2.5, then we would need to lose 5.6 million in fund balance if we went to 2.5 mils.
Yeah. See, the part that because we're in a COVID economy, as we all know, when we have increased millage in the past, it's been the lost revenue that has usually in a couple of years offset that increase.
That's right.
But for perilous times financially that we're in right now, I think we have to consider it. So.
I do too.
Okay. So
I do want, Amy, remind everyone about our millage rate, given the rollback that we recently had with the reassessment, that even if you add the 2 or the 3 mills, am I correct that we're still below what our operating millage was a month ago?
yes, so our millage in 2019 was 79.6 mils. We rolled it back to 74.3 for 2020. And if we do the 3 mils, we'll be at 77.3, which is still less than the 79.6.
So we'd still be 2.3 mils less than what we were.
Right. Yes.
Now I realize that people are writing a bigger check if their properties happen to be worth more. But still, from a millage point of view, we'd be less.
Mhm.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, Amy, how does that compare to North Charleston or Mount Pleasant? Have we had a chance to look at this?
I haven't, but we can look at it, especially since everybody's millage changed this year. So we haven't
Right.
looked at it, but we can do that.
Well, I just make sure we're in the same ballpark, basically. I think we will be.
Okay.
We were the only jurisdiction never keeping any of the lost, right? So we know we're competitive with our neighbors on that basis.
Right.
Right. Well, I'll give you net millage for each of the jurisdictions, considering
Okay,
the
good.
option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
So basically, like I said, it's based on increasing millage by 3 mils and keeping 50% of the revenue fund a local option, provides an additional 9 million to the general fund. Enterprise fund was operating in a smaller than we normally see profit. So 4.26 million to the general fund from enterprise funds, transferring tourism funds of 7.4, which is still more than $2 million under what we normally transfer in to the general fund. Expenditures were reduced by 9 million. It includes the continuation of the hiring freeze. There's no COLA for the employees, no raise to minimum wage, but it will not, it would not require us to do a furlough or a pay reduction. And then their next step, I don't have a lot of slides because we've talked about this a lot. I just
Right,
summary sort of until we have our full council workshop next week. So we will have that on November 18th. The advertisement that you see in the paper on Sunday, because we had to send that in on this past Tuesday, is this budget, just so you know. So I don't know if you have any questions or concerns about that. And then November 24th, we will bring the local option sales tax resolution to council for approval, which will allow us to keep a portion of those funds rather than giving 100% back. And then the first reading of the budget will be on December 1st. And there will be a public hearing on the budget at that meeting as well. And then that's all I had. If you have any other questions, or want to discuss anything further.
Councilmember Shade and then Waring.
Yes, sir. So Mayor, I can't remember if you made this comment or Amy, but the 3 mil increase on, and I think we're using $300,000 home value as our basis, translates into what increase per property owner?
Can you see this screen? Did it change? Yes.
right.
Okay, so this would be the millage right here. If we just did straight millage, it's this amount right here on 300,000. And then this would be what we're proposing in this budget would be this column here.
So for a $300,000 home, it's a $36 increase.
If we just did millage, but doing
81.
millage and the 50% of the revenue fund, it's the $81.
81 bucks.
So it's 36 plus 81 or 81?
No, just 81 total.
Okay.
And that's Charleston County, and then that's Berkeley County.
Okay.
What was that second one you had there, Amy? That was if it was 2 mil?
No, Berkeley County.
It's Berkeley
It's
County.
Berkeley.
Oh, that was Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Yep.
Would be less because they have less of a local option sales tax credit, correct?
And they didn't get hit as hard either as for local option, whereas the Charleston County got hit pretty hard for local option, which is what made it a little harder and not as much anyway. Berkeley County didn't get hit as hard with local option sales tax.
All right. Councilmember Seekings, I see your picture came alive. Did you want to ask a question or a comment?
I did, just in advance of next week when we come to the full council, if you don't mind. We've always, every year we do this budget, we use a $300,000 house at 4% as the sort of example of what it's going to cost someone if we raise their taxes. What, do we know what percentage of people paying property taxes in the city live in a $300,000 4% house as opposed to something different? I mean, my understanding is 50% of the residents in the city of Charleston don't own their houses, or they're where they live, but that's a property having tax paid on it. So that would be at the 6%. I'm interested to know, when we use that as an example, how many people that actually translates to as opposed to the rest of the world.
I would have to get that from the county, but
County.
typically they use like an average. So,
Right.
but I can get it from the county. We can do some examples at 6% as well if you'd like us to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things when we start tinkering with lost and with property taxes is, sure, I mean, if you're a family that owns a $300,000 house, that's one hit you take. But property taxes affect people who rent equally because those taxes get passed through to those people who are renting. So I just think we just got to put out a fair sort of economic picture of what this is really going to mean to small business, to people renting and all that. Because it's a pretty big hunk between 3 mils and a 50% rollback of lost.
Okay, we'll get City of Charleston specific average
Okay.
and then do it at 4% and 6%.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Like,
Thank you. Councilman Waring?
Yeah, thanks. Listen, obviously these are hard decisions to make, and I hear you, Mike. But if there are any other councilmen, on this meeting that would like to do or have some thought processes that we should go in another direction. I'd like to hear the counter, and I don't say that in a mean way. Somebody may say something that we didn't think of. I guess it's an inquiring way, because that's the first time I've had a choice like this in almost 9 years. And of course, Mike's been on longer than I, and I don't know if Councilman Gregory's online or not, but this is the first time in recent time that we've been faced with this. But then again, it's the first time in about 100 years we had a pandemic too. But one other thing I want to say, and I mentioned this in our one-on-one, Mr. Mayor. Not now, but Amy, because I know you all covered over, but all of us got bombarded with, defund the police and somehow backing out 5,000 for community initiatives.
5 million.
5 million, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for community initiatives. And the reality is, on a lot of those initiatives, we are already spending them, but they come out of, in most cases, the general fund. On some even cases, when it comes to drainage, it comes out of stormwater fund. So if a concerned citizen were to go to our budget and say, well, how much do they spend on affordable housing? Or how much do they spend on drainage in underserved areas? There's not a quick, ready reference. And the reason I say that, the interest that we pay Amy on the $20 million bond, that comes out of our general fund. But if somebody looked at our budget under affordable housing, they'll never see that $700,000+ every year. I think that's what we pay on that, interest on that, somewhere up in that neighborhood. Or when we use fee in lieu to put a subsidy into the owner-occupied houses that were affordable houses that were built in Ashleyville, that doesn't show up anywhere in our budget. Now we know we're doing it. All 13 people, the mayor and 12 council people, know that we're doing it. You know we're doing it, but there's no place for the public to go and see. I think if we were to go and extract monies that fee in lieu that were leveraged to create affordable housing, dollars being spent in minority communities to alleviate flooding, the interest we pay on a $20 million affordable bond, and I'm sure there are other things out there. The business license fee that I think we added 3% to some years ago to help run our affordable housing office. I think you're going to find that we may be beyond $5 million. But we'll have a fairly decent number out there, well beyond the 300,000 that some of the letters that we all got that was sent to us. So there's got to be a better way for us to tell that story financially and have it on our website. Do we need to do more? I think we all would say, yeah. But for example, CPW, now this was CPW monies, but it was because the relationship with the city spent $1.8+ million bringing water and sewer into the mitigated area on Grace, the Grace apartments that just recently were opened by the Housing Authority. And again, normally that's a development cost, but they brought those dollars in trying to assist the city in this goal of creating permanent affordable housing. But somehow that accounting doesn't get in there. You follow me? So somehow on the other side of this, maybe I don't know, late December, January, we can have a actual, and those are the facts. If somebody were to say, I'm from Missouri, show me, what are you guys doing in these areas that they're requesting monies for, and asking us where to take it from. We need to identify where money is already going to some of these causes, and they'll see that we're working together. And we go forward together, as opposed to I got you, you're not doing it, it's only 300,000. They're saying that because they don't know where the money is and what it's actually doing.
So I have a few comments on that. Unless Councilman Gregory, you want to go first? Sorry.
Yeah, and if you really look at some of the things that they're requesting to fund out of the 5 million, some of those things are really not the responsibility of the city. Some of them are the responsibility of the
School board.
school, right, exactly, thank you, the school board, okay? Some of them are also the responsibility that is shared with the housing authority. Most folks don't clearly understand that the housing authority is a separate legal entity from the city. And they're also infusing dollars into affordable housing. So to me, I agree with you, Councilman. There needs to be some kind of educational approach to kind of let the public know that there are things that we are already doing that probably do far exceed the 5 million or the 10% reduction that they want us to take on the police department. But in addition to that, many of the things that they're articulating are really not directly the responsibility of the city. And I think we need to identify that.
So, you know, the 5 million that they talked about, if you really look at the police department's operating budget, it's only $5.9 million in 2020. So you would be defunding the police department because everything else is salaries. So I understand that it's a big budget, but it's salaries for the police department. I can have in the full council workshop next week, because all of the affordable housing, that's all in our special revenue funds. And if anybody really looked at our comprehensive annual financial report or our CAPR, you kind of would see a bigger picture of all the funds. It's not as detailed as maybe a budget would be, but it's in there. But I can provide some information on that for the full council workshop next week if you'd like me to do that. And then also we're working on storyboards and things like that. With OpenGov, it's part of the transparency that we're trying to implement. And one of the storyboards will be affordable housing. It will be drainage and all of that. So we are working towards getting those storyboards done so that the public can see all of these things, these great things that we're doing. Just to let you know, I wasn't sure if any of you knew about that project, but we are working toward it anyway.
And then that goes back to a suggestion that Councilman Waring raised at our last meeting. I do think that we need to do a better job of letting the public know when we're in certain areas and we're doing things. And I think that would make them a bit more aware that there are dollars going into some of the things that they're wanting us to fund, because we're already funding it. They just don't know. And I agree. I think if we do some type of signage, not just for stormwater, okay,
right.
For many of the other projects that we work on throughout the city, I think it would be a good campaign for us to let the folks know, here's the city in action, taking care of X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and I think if you look at, again, Grace Homes, you look at ML King swimming pools. As a matter of fact, I hadn't been over there in months, and Councilman Gregory told me, have you seen it? Go by, it's beautiful. And I agree, it is absolutely beautiful. Sunday I rode by and I saw South Carolina State Building. You know, the city obviously gave that land and helped facilitate. Somehow that doesn't, we're not getting credit for that. Not that we're asking for credit, but we need to be able to let the public know and let them come and actually touch and feel those actual, and that's going to be a community center that's going to serve, again, the community at the South Carolina State facility that's coming along very well. I don't know if any of y'all have been by there lately. It's wonderful. Yeah. So in a sense, my grandfather used to say, out of all bad comes some good. Sometimes you need a magnifying glass to find the good, but if you look, it's there. So we're doing a lot of good. We need to help these people with the magnifying glass to see it.
Right.
And thank you, Amy. I didn't know about the storyboards. I was hesitant to heap anything else on you because I know you all are very much overworked right now trying to crank this budget out. So thank you.
So Councilmember Shade, back to you.
Yes, sir. So Amy, thank you for sending us that general fund budget history. It really does help put things in perspective and for the public to know that our total approved revenue budget in 2002 was just a little bit above $85 million. And for 2020, it's $195 million. That's a huge increase over that period of time. And then when you look at also the amount of transfers from the enterprise funds to help us balance our budget, I mean, as high as last year, or I'm sorry, yeah, maybe last year, $11 million in transfer. And I mean, those are things that I think we just need to highlight a little bit more to show people how this budget has increased dramatically. The mayor started off by talking about the number of population growth and reduction in our city staff, employee staff. And still this budget just incrementally grows every year. It's just a very important part of how the history of this community and the lifeblood, the health of this community is reflected in this budget. So I think this is a good visual, particularly for me, and I think for a lot of other folks, as to how this has changed over time. So thanks for putting that together.
So what has been presented to you today has been the process of a lot of hard work by Amy and our staff, but also the recommendations and I feel the consensus of this ad hoc budget committee. So let me just ask at this juncture, with what has been presented to you today, is it still our consensus that this is our proposal to move forward to council?
For me, it is. It's consistent
Yes.
with what we talked about the last time.
Yes, sir. Karen, Councilmember Jackson, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I agree with that. We all know what we face with, but I still say in January, if we can look under more rocks or whatever and come up with revenue, we continue to do that.
That's right. Absolutely. And we will continue to do that. And thank you. I'm going to publicly here shout out to Councilmember Waring, who has brought an idea to me to investigate, maybe getting a little bit of money out of one of our relationships that may be possible. We don't have a final word on that, and it might not be as much as a mill. We might get close to it. So we're working on that, and we're also as has been referenced here today by both Councilmember Shade and Waring, if we are fortunate enough to get some CARES help in the coming year from the federal government, it would make a huge difference. And the numbers we submit next September could be a different scenario. But we, unlike the federal government, are, and I'm thankful that we must have a balanced budget. This is the responsible thing to do. We had a $18 million shortfall. We're balancing that with a budget cuts, along with preserving our workforce, which I think they deserve that. At the same time, we're freezing hiring for another year. I know some of our departments had been hoping to get some of this extra help. They won't be getting it. We're also are not doing a cost of living increase, which frankly I regret, but these are tough times, you know, and we are not impacting the minimum wage. We have a goal to get to $15. We're only at 13. I had hoped to get us to $13.50 this year. So we're going to have to delay that for another year as well. So there's been tough choices on both sides of the ledger, both on the expense side and on the revenue side, which is where, as I started out the meeting, is where our biggest challenges have been, given the impact of COVID-19.
Mayor?
Jackson.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely agree that the decision that we were, leaning into last meeting is the one that I would support. I just wanted us to be reminded about the stormwater budget, because we sort of left that, in my recollection, up in the air in terms of whether we would entertain an increase in order to have another crew be able to take take more responsibility or more rapidly. We're taking responsibility, but be able to respond more rapidly if we would be able to increase our maintenance budget. So I know that's a different time, right? We don't have to decide the stormwater budget we don't have
No.
first on December 1st, correct?
No, we could take that to the second meeting if we needed to.
So in addition, council members, since that discussion, Councilmember Waring and I, who are both on the Charleston Water Service Board, have met with the leadership there and talked further about a topic that we discussed, I think, year before last, and that's some billing situations, I guess, with the way we bill our stormwater fund through Charleston Water Service. You know, when someone frankly doesn't pay their water bill, we just lose out on our stormwater fee. If we have a homestead exemption for that fee, which there's some question whether that should have been done in the first place or not. There's issues of whether, you know, an audit of they call them the residential equivalents done on commercial properties could generate some more income. So there's a number of factors that we believe, after talking with our friends at CWS, that we could maximize our stormwater fee by perhaps as much as $900,000 a year without having an increase. And so I felt like after having that discussion, I hadn't shared this with y'all yet, I feel it's incumbent on us to run down those rabbit holes first and make sure we're doing everything you know, reasonable and feasible to collect the existing rate before we go and increase it any further. So that was the investigation that did result from that conversation.
Yeah,
So
Mr.
does
Mayor,
that mean that we wouldn't be able to establish or amend the stormwater fee during 2021 if we chose that was a, you know, a decision we want to make? Is it a finite date? We have to do it in December or not at all?
Well, you would normally set our stormwater budget before the end of the year, right, Amy? But I mean, there's no magic to a mid-year adjustment in a budget, just like we had to do in 2020. But I think it's responsible for us to run down those other issues first before we decide to have another change in that, and until we get the full prioritization of projects done. Councilmember Ware.
That's logical to me, but I'd like to leave the lights on to be able to make a change if it makes sense down the road.
I hear you. I hear you.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilwoman Jackson, once the mayor gets a little bit more additional information, Amy, this will, and Councilmember, this will be reoccurring revenue. In addition to what the mayor just said, when somebody cuts their water off, for example, I'm going to be out of town for the next eight months. I cut my water off. The stormwater fee doesn't get collected. Or when somebody gets behind in their stormwater fee and they get their service cut off, CWS is to cut it back on. Obviously, they have to pay the water bill, but they don't enforce collection of stormwater fees. So there are a number of avenues out there. I mean, if you want to call it found money, that if we just sharpen our pencils, we can collect those dollars in a more efficient manner that they've suggested to us. There's some more information to come forward. For example, Mr. Mayor brought up one, and the mayor brought up one in that, let's just say I have one water meter and I've got a duplex, but I only have one water meter. Right now, we only get stormwater fee for one unit. And the reality is it's actually 2 units there. So some of the audit issues that the mayor alluded to, we can do some of that. And I think you're going to find that revenue is going to actually go beyond 7 figures. Once we do, it's not going to be hard to cross check. So, and plus there are actually some delinquent accounts out there. A lot of delinquent accounts. We're gonna find out what they are. And it's just like if you don't pay your delinquent taxes, you got to pay your delinquent stormwater fee. So we will find out what that amount is. It's going to be relatively short. We're going to find that out. So we're being a pretty big ally in addition to some other things. So hopefully we can have the mayor have some good information to report out on that. Which will
good.
be
Thank you.
recurring revenues, and I know Amy will be overjoyed with that.
All right, any further business to come before us this afternoon?
Well, thank you, Amy, for all you're doing and your team. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Amy.